I was a close friend of Zainab Abu-Salha, so this is always a tough thing to watch. But I'd like to really thank Justine for having us here. She's done a lot in the wake of the shooting, and she's been able to get in a lot of crowds that we wouldn't have been able to on our own, so we're really appreciative of that.
Hi, I'm Zainab, and I'm running for Raleigh City Council. I'm sure you guys heard that a lot on the documentary. Kind of got used to saying it, but yeah, so I'm Zainab. It's a pleasure to be back here. I'm an alumni of this wonderful school too, Go Wolfpack. And thank you, Justine, because you've been an awesome supporter for many years, and it's been a pleasure knowing you.
So we're gonna start off with some questions. So but part of this is the National Geographic series, so hopefully you'll keep watching the America Inside Out with Katie Couric, and I'm hoping Katie retweets us tonight. So she, Dr. Abu-Salha got to meet Katie Couric and went to a special screening in New York City with a documentary. And so keep watching the series, but National Geographic was great to work with, and they encouraged the panels, so they also sent some stock questions that we can start off. But I want you to be thinking about what questions you have, because you really have a panel of experts and us working together as a community. So for each of the panelists, if you could share what you would like the audience members to take away from this documentary.
Okay, I guess I'll start. I think it's important to realize that we shouldn't always take things at face value. There's a lot of digging that I think people have to do to realize that what you see on the media isn't always true. I think that's also becoming pretty apparent with the scrutinization of the media, I would say. But at the same time, there is still a lot of work to be done. So I think what's important to take out of this is to just make sure that if you see something and it sounds kind of sketchy, it probably is. I think you should sit back, do your research before you really believe what you see. And I know that sounds very conspiratorial, but unfortunately we have to start doing our own research, especially with how easy it is to circulate fake news. Sorry, Donald Trump.
Let's see what you say first.
Do that all the time.
You can only do that one time.
What I would like people to take away from this is that hate is blind and ignorant, and hate hurts. And the price is dear and very, very costly. Also, what attracted me to this country growing up is watching the intellectual products of this country overseas. I grew up watching Bill Cosby, Michael Jackson, Madonna later on, Wild West, admired American cars industry, American schools and medicine and universities, and it's a dream of everybody there to come here for education or opportunity or business. And the portrayal of a whole nation or faith as criminals or terrorists just to earn an election seat is really cheap scapegoating. So I want you to just keep in mind when you hear such blanket remarks to just use your intelligence and read more than watching just TV and pundits on TV.
Yeah, I would kind of add to that, to just open your minds. I think at the last panel that was at the Lighthouse, someone had asked, you know, other than the thing that happened here in Raleigh with our three friends, was there anything else that made us fear for our lives on the daily? And I'm sure a lot of people here will say, you know, they get different stares or they'll be cut off on the road. I know my wife's been cut off while driving in the past. So you hear these different type of stories, but then there's so many stories you don't hear about, or you know, as they've gone through that 24-hour news cycle, we've forgotten about. There was Mr. Gerard in Oklahoma. He was murdered on his doorstep by a disgruntled neighbor. Same thing. He called him a filthy Arab. And then in Portland, Oregon, the two guys that stood up for the Muslim girl that was being harassed and they were, I think, stabbed to death at the time. And those are just a few things, you know. There's so much going on in the world right now, and you know, I don't even like to make it just about Muslims, because there's so many marginalized communities and so many things happening. And you know, we hear about Black Lives Matter, and you know, even stuff, you know, something like that becomes controversial. And I always ask myself, why? Why is that type of term controversial? Even our LGBT friends, they're also constantly under attack. So I just tell everyone, remind them, just look at everything with an open mind. This is one part of a 6-part series, and she covers different aspects of America. So I would encourage you to go home and make sure you catch those other episodes as well.
I mean, you guys touched on pretty much everything, but I would say resilience and beauty, just because I feel like this documentary really speaks to how resilient the Muslim community is as a whole, as well as how beautiful it is and how diverse. I think we definitely could have done better in terms of diversity, but that we are a fabric of this country, and that's what I really hope that people continue to take from this documentary, from watching it, from learning from each other's stories, is that it's not us or them, it's all of us. So that's what I hope people take.
So share with us what it's like to be Muslim in Raleigh, North Carolina. So we certainly learned a little bit from the documentary, and then further drill down for Zainab and Doha and Shadi, what it was like, because you're all alumni now, what it was like to be Muslim on NC State's campus.
It's been a while, so Doha.
So I've had a little bit of a different experience being Muslim. I wore the headscarf for 10 years. So definitely growing up had some challenges with that. There was a girl in the documentary at the Islamic Association of Raleigh who had said that somebody told her she had a bomb in her scarf or something. I mean, those are the types of things that we heard a lot growing up. So definitely, you know, that resonated with me. I've heard those comments in the past. Do you have cancer? Why are you covering your hair? You know, silly things like that. But I do feel so blessed to have been at NC State, because I realized, although it can kind of create a sort of safety bubble because everyone here, or for the most part, is so diverse and accepting, I've had great experiences. I've been able to plan a lot of events around raising awareness for you know, some of the political and social issues that we're having in our country, and everyone that's come to these events has been really accepting. Last year we held a panel where titled Challenging Anti-Muslim Sentiments, and I remember having a meeting with you know, some of the staff at NC State about, okay, if something bad were to happen, we're going to need to let these people who are hating, we're going to have to let them say what they want to say because of their right to free speech. And I became really afraid in that moment, like, okay, this is real, that I'm creating this event that's controversial to some people and that may cause problems. Thankfully, there was no negative feedback, no backlash, so really grateful to the campus community for that.
I'm gonna talk more about being Muslim in Raleigh, because it's been a while since I was at State. So basically, you know, I always tell people there's like 2 parts. Like, so my wife wears a headscarf, and I remember one time we were at dinner about a year ago, and there were 3 people across at the table, and she was like, "Did you see what just happened?" And you know, I'm just kind of oblivious, and I go, "No, what?" She goes, "All 3 of those guys were just staring at me." And it's like, you know how sometimes you feel someone staring, so you look, and then they look away? She was like, "I looked, and they just all kept staring, like they didn't break eye contact. But then when I looked, nobody was looking, you know?" So that's one extreme. The other extreme is, I'll be walking with my wife and people will see she's Muslim and they'll hold the door wide open for her. And then I'm like behind her and then they'll let go. Like they just did it for her, you know? So, you know, I think you see those different types of experiences. And I think, I guess, us growing up here, we have, I guess, a little different story than an immigrant story. We got really embedded into society, and even growing up, my wife's a big Tim McGraw fan. Like, she loves country music, you would never guess. And the last concert we were at, I think we had been there 3 years in a row, like in the front row. And then that last year we were there, Tim McGraw like just remembered her and like handed his guitar to her. And like, you know, she, at that point she forgot about me. She was ready to jump on stage with him, you know? So, yeah, so I would say overall living in Raleigh has been remarkable. And I think after tragedies, it kind of changed that for us, but I'll let Mohammad comment more.
So, though the question Justine had was in Raleigh, I actually lived in Clinton, North Carolina for a few years. And then now living in Raleigh, my work day is in Clayton, North Carolina. So I see the Southern culture. And yes, the tragedy was massive and changed our lives, but I don't fail to see that we humans in different countries and cultures are more similar than different. We have much more common between us all on this globe than different. But our politicians, or like I called them before, pundits or extremists or radicals, they always point out the differences. When I first started working in Clinton, our residency training, and I was not educated about the local culture, one of my coworkers gave me a gift, a small book titled Rednecking Made Ridiculously Easy. Because you could see that I could not understand the Samsonian dialogues in Sampson County. And now I'm proud to say that I really understand my patients very well, and I'm very comfortable talking to them about their depression, their losses, death and dying, cancer, everything, on a faith-based dialogue, because I know in the South here people are more into faith than anywhere else. And they get surprised when they know that I'm also a believer and that I have a God, and it's the same God they worship. And I tell them that Jesus was not American, he was Jordanian/Palestinian. And he looked more like me than like Trump, for example. And then we connect a very beautiful level. And whereas the first visit may have started a bit skittish or standoffish, as they warm up and they get to know me and I get to know them, they're very grateful that they could talk about difficult subjects. So I see beauty everywhere, I see beauty in everybody, and I just refuse to look for hate. Sometimes I hear hateful remarks or biased remarks in a very indirect way or apologetic way, and I let that go. I don't emphasize that. Let the time pass and let people get to know you more. The loss has changed our lives, but it will never make us different. We still love this country, and we will fight to keep this country a democracy, and will not allow people to hijack it like they hijacked our faith.
So the main thing I remember being Muslim at NC State is the number of basketball losses I've been through. So that was probably one of the most traumatic, I'm just kidding, but seriously. So I guess I grew up in Raleigh, and so it's hard to talk about how it is to be Muslim in Raleigh because I don't really have anything to compare it to. I would say that there's just many aspects to it. There's that part like Shadi described, either people are super like nice and just over the top and like understand you, and there's the other side that's just completely dismisses you. And that feeling of being dismissed as a human being is one that's really hard to explain, because it's a lot of times that, you know, a lot of times when you talk about these incidents, they might not seem as big of a deal as other things that you might see on the news or something like that, but it's not a one-time thing. Like, this is a every day, maybe 4 times, 5 times a day, you go and just something simple, like you're trying to go to the gas station to buy something, and you just get dismissed as a human being. And I think that's one of the biggest factors we've kind of had to overcome. And I'll say we were kind of forced in a conversation today as a family, just to talk about discrimination for something else. And the people who were talking to us, my siblings started sharing some of their stories, and I was like, I didn't even know about that. Like, you're facing a lot of stuff that we're facing, we're not talking about it. And then we talked about it, and like the way we deal with it a lot of times is through humor, or we make fun of it, or like, I think there's a couple of people at our mosque who showed up a few months ago or something, and there was like 2 or 3 of them, and they wore bacon on their heads. I don't eat pork, but I'm not like repelled, or I'm not a vampire. Like it's just kind of tough to understand those things, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, the mosque had a conversation with them, and everything was kind of like, people had a better understanding of each other. But I still talked to them, and I was like, as Muslims, we're facing a lot of those issues, but like, I have a brother that, at the end of the day, he's almost 6'3", 6'4", so he's facing other issues I'm not, right? He looks like a brown or maybe black man, so when he's stopped by the cops, he's acting a certain way where I wouldn't, right? So we are facing, I think, individual, different things as Muslims, but also the same, because there's a lot of everything that happens in this community still affects us. We're not like blinded from that either. So there's a lot of different, I'd say, just a lot of different factors in it, and there's no way you can explain it in under than like 50 days, but yeah.
So my last question before we open up to the audience, how can non-Muslims be better allies and be more supportive of the Muslim community? What can people do?
This one's for Shadi.
I would say there's many things that you can do. The first thing is, this documentary is online right now. So I would say if you enjoyed it, please share it on your Facebook wall, share it everywhere, share it with that friend that's just always posting that hateful stuff. You see it probably roll by your newsfeed sometimes, and just don't touch it. These are the type of conversations we need to be having, and then sometimes those conversations are hard. So you can just show them something like this documentary. It's just very easy for them to watch. I think I would say just, they say 5, I think the statistic, 5 out of 10 people don't know a Muslim. I've heard 7 out of 10 people. I've heard, now you've all met us, so hello. But now that you've talked to us, and hopefully you stick around afterwards and get to know us better. But we would rely on people like you that have met us to also stand up for us when we're not around, and someone's at work by the cubicle and saying that hurtful stuff. I would expect you guys to step up and don't let that happen on your watch. So I think that's the main thing. I got other things in my head, maybe come back to me.
I think it's important to kind of get connected to some of the resources out there. We've got the Lighthouse Project is working to alter the Muslim American narrative, allow us to take control of our narrative. Definitely important to get involved with the food drive that Shadi puts on every year in honor of our 3 winners. We get a lot of people from a lot of different faith groups there, and we're able to feed tens of thousands of people, which is always incredible, because every year we think that the numbers are going to go down, and it just keeps going up. So there are definitely a lot of communities. There's open houses that the mosque does every once in a while that will be definitely an enlightening experience for those who haven't really had any interaction with Muslims. And what else we got? There's honestly so many Muslim organizations. There's a Triangle Muslim Aid, which is a volunteer organization. You'll see them every other Sunday or once a month in downtown Raleigh feeding the homeless. There's a lot of different organizations. It's just about reaching out. And I know that we are interested in reaching out to other people. So if any of you have people in your network that you would like us to connect with, we would absolutely love that.
I'd say connect. Just talk to people. Just have a conversation. Learn more about us. Let us learn more about you. And also speak up. Not just the conversations we're in, but the conversations we're not in. So those conversations you have with people who might always look all like you and they're talking about something that's wrong about Muslims, speak up then when we're not there. So like that's for me is, it'd be great to see where a lot of those conversations people are more comfortable having is with people of, you know, maybe they're more close with or more either like racially close with, culturally, whatever. But sometimes those conversations people speak more freely. So in those conversations, it's really important for people who say they're allies of the Muslim community to speak up and to tell people what you're saying. Hey, listen, actually, I know this person and that's not how they are. Those are the conversations I think sometimes we all have trouble speaking up in.
So it's hard to add any points to what everybody said. It's simply at the mosque in Raleigh, the IOR, we have an open house every year. Please don't miss that. You're invited to go and attend the presentations, and there's good food, by the way, then, and booths for activities. I just encourage everybody, when you hear news and see events unfolding on TV or worldwide, to just realize this is a religion that encompasses 1.6 billion people at least. And just like Christianity, we have all shades and kinds of people from all walks of life. So if anybody does something wrong, it's not because they're Muslim. They happened to be Muslim. And Timothy McVeigh happened to be Christian. Hitler happened to be Christian too. He calls himself. I don't think he is, but he calls himself, he did consider himself Christian. So people do all kinds of things in the name of religion. That does not mean the religion presented. So go to the roots and read logically about what you see, and then read about that religion and ask somebody who does practice it questions. Your neighbor, your colleague at work, somebody who's not related to the exact event you're watching. Out of loyalty to my children, I would ask you to visit their endowment website, their foundation website, www.our3winners.org, and watch the video we have posted there and read about them too. And if you want to donate $5, we appreciate that too, because the endowment is not meant to do charity for just Muslims. It's going to be doing charity for everybody. And we just had our gala for fundraising, and I think our assets now exceed $1 million. That's going to be used annually as an investment to promote charity and help refugees and the homeless and the disasters areas and all kinds of help, including education too. So www.our3winners.org, and you will learn more about us. And the Lighthouse, Faris is there. The project is also for Muslim youth to participate in different activities, and any humanistic organization to use the Lighthouse as an open space and venue for their practice and their participation. Just an open door. That's all I can add.
So we've mentioned a couple of ways for folks to get involved. Faris Barakat is here with us, brother of Dia, and the Lighthouse, which is a physical place in downtown Raleigh, and not only a center, but a way to help engage the youth, and not youth just meaning middle school, high schoolers, all the folks here on stage, except for maybe Dr. Abu-Salha and I, are youth, right? So it goes past college. You're still in, Shadi, you're still in. How many of you in the room are not Muslim? So the majority of you.
Wow.
And you quickly raise your hands. Of those of you that just raised your hand, how many of you have ever been to a mosque? So just a small fraction. So you heard Dr. Abu-Salha mention that The mosque does an open house every year. It happens in March. But we can also work and coordinate, and you can just go by the mosque. Fiaz is usually who you might see there. He was in the documentary. The Imam, Dr. Abu-Salha, will be there as well. Get out of your comfort zone and learn. So it is incumbent on us as allies and non-Muslims to be able to be knowledgeable and educated, and to be that activist ally, that we can help and stand up for our Muslim brothers and sisters. So that is incumbent on us. So the vast majority of us in this room right now are at privilege when it comes to our voices, and you have to be able to find a way to use that. Okay, I want to open up and have some time for questions from the audience. And my good friend Colin, right here, has a microphone, so he'll come around. Our first question, young woman on my right, your left. And if you could say your name and your question.
Hi, I'm Lulu. I'm a first year here at State. And a lot of times when we think of Islamophobia, we think of it like within white communities, but even within communities of color, there's a big amount of it that we're not addressing. And being from Cameroon, I know that like it's a split population with Christians and Muslims. So how do we deal with it within our own communities, and how do we address it?
Can I take a stab at that?
Yes, sir.
I'm glad you asked that question, and that's a good reminder of the fact that Islam did not come here with us, the immigrants, 70 years ago. Islam came here with the first slaves that were brought from Africa. So Islam has been here way before many other races and ethnicities and people were here. It's estimated that 1/3 of the kidnapped African people were Muslim. And I, interestingly, grew up watching Alex Hill's Roots while growing up in the Middle East, where Kunta Kinte, the portrayed character in the series, was a Muslim too. And there is also a part of the African-American community that is a Muslim as well. Of course, we're like every religion, we're different shades and different views of Islam too. We're not all homogeneous completely. And maybe a good idea to also invoke the help of those in the Black community who are Muslim, because I think they can understand more the questions and reach more. And we, as Muslims who are not Black or different ethnicities, I actually call myself Black or brown, we owe it to you too to reach out. I think we have been short of reaching out to other ethnicities and minorities, and that part of that is because the dominant political talk has got us too busy defending ourselves than reaching out to people. And that's, like Zainab said in the documentary, is a tiring job to have, to defend yourself all the time. When my late Razan started her college career, it was the first year at Campbell University, and people would approach her and say, because she wore the hijab, and her sister did, and my wife does too, people would approach her and say, so where do you come from? Presuming she's a foreign student. And she goes, Virginia Beach is where I was born. And probably Trump would have a problem with her birth certificate. And people who hate will not have a problem with her death certificates. So it goes both ways. I think we need to use the help of African American Muslims, and we also need to have other Muslims reach out to the African American community. And I'm proud to say that when you go to our mosque, to the Friday prayer, which is equal to your Sunday Mass in church, you will see the world there. You will literally see the United Nations there. You'll see people from Asia, Africa, South America, white Americans, Black Americans, Middle Easterns, Indians, Pakistanis, Vietnamese, Malaysians, all nationalities, origins, but everybody's an American mostly. I hope that answers your question to an extent. Thank you.
Other questions? We don't have, if you don't have an answer or something to add, we don't have to have each panelist answer.
Yeah, I was just going to add that education is very important and key. This actually got cut out from the Katie interview, but one of the things that I brought up to her is that you look at all these Muslim countries around the world, and you look at somewhere like Iraq or Afghanistan or Libya now, and they're in a state of war. Their institutions have been destroyed, their schools are gone. The people your age right now in Afghanistan or Iraq or Libya or Syria, what are they doing right now? And where are they going to be 20 years from now? We're losing generations to these wars. And that's just going to produce someone with a different mindset that maybe might not be worried about dialogue or worried about anything else. I'm sure Cameroon has their own set of problems that people just worry about, you know? So I think we're blessed here that we're pretty much living privileged lives overall, right? That we can not really have huge concerns, and that's why it's more important to focus on education, educating our kids. You guys in 5 to 6 years from now are gonna be out in the work world. I would say remember us, and then if you're gonna be in media, if you're gonna be doctors, you're gonna be thinking, how can you in turn help a Muslim or help your community or help any marginalized community? It doesn't just have to be Muslim. I keep saying Muslim because it was about Muslims, but there's so many issues, and I think as a country we're suffering. So I would again say open your minds and figure out 5 years from now, what do you want to be doing in the world?
I'll just add something. So actually, once again, talking about this day, my sister was talking about she goes to Central, and it's an HBCU, and you know, at Central, she goes there and she talks about how people still there will, you know, call her terrorist or Osama or whatever, right? But she deals with it. And then she goes out to the regular world, and then the regular, you know, more of maybe white America, whatever, those same words come to her. But then she comes to the Muslim world, and there's a whole other issue internally within, you know, that we deal with as Muslims as well. But on the other hand, there's instances like, it's crazy, this all happened today too. There was, I went to the lighthouse today, and there was a man there who had been beaten by police, Raleigh police, and he was at the lighthouse, and he was telling his story there at the lighthouse. And I thought that was beautiful because, not his story obviously, but the fact that he was in a house that was created from such a tragic incident, and they created the house was created to literally, you know, take hate and turn it into love and spread, you know, just work in the community and whatnot. And then this man who was, you know, please look it up, but he was brutally beaten by police, by dogs. He had dog bites all over himself. But he's sitting in that house talking about the beauty of him being here and being able to relate with that and to just talk about how he still has hope. And I thought that was beautiful because he's not Muslim, but he's from a community that even as Muslims, we've marginalized for a very long time, as the country has. And I just thought that moment was very powerful, and that it gave me hope for a long time to come, because I've been waiting for us to do something like this. So it was a pretty powerful moment. So to your question is that, you know, you reach out, we reach out, we really just need to connect on one thing, is that we're all facing the same issue in terms of hate. So we kind of need to address it, talk to each other, and think of a way to fix it.
Other questions? Colin, you get to select.
Hi, I'm Peter, and I know we've talked about the idea of self-preservation, which, again, as a minority, I understand where you feel that going into a space might not be the most welcoming place. But I'm just curious as to how, you know, having your foremost identity and deciding what to do with that in the situations that go on, and how does that look like, that it's me standing with my identity, and then having, again, you know, it's a difficult decision where you feel like for you to make yourself safe is more the idea of passing, and just having to deal with that conversation with yourself internally, being Americans?
I definitely think that's a good question. I think everyone who gets involved in activism is aware of some kind of risk because of, it puts them in the spotlight, and there's obviously people out there who are not very accepting of those things. So honestly, it's about considering the positives that are going to come out from it. I mean, if it's worth it to fight, I think we need to fight tooth and nail. We have to get together and work on these issues, even if it means that we're going to hear hateful comments. And unfortunately, people do get hurt in these situations, but I think not doing something is even more scary.
Next question. Great job, Doha.
I teach at the UNC School of Dentistry, and I am so sorry for your loss. I would have loved to have had your daughter this year. So my question, I think, is to you, Doctor. Can you speak to your understanding of kind of the biological evolutionary origin of this hatred, the nationalism we're experiencing, take it down to tribalism, to clanism? Where do you see that coming from in our brains? And then are you hopeful that this process of educating and learning, I've befriended, Ruby has befriended me, who I know you know, and she has helped me see and understand things that I never did before, because I come from a small southern town. So I'd love to know your thoughts on the origin of this fear that drives this hatred, and are you hopeful?
This is a really deep question that we can really spend the night talking about, and I'd love to talk about it. It's really looking at the root of the problem. And I think I've been privileged to have lived on both sides of the fence, having been raised in the Middle East, where I saw the politics there, and I saw America from there, and then coming here and seeing USA from inside. And to summarize it, I believe that, again, when I was a teenager, the ideal was we loved to come to the United States. We admired the United States culture, industry, technology, progress, advancements. This country made waves when it landed in Normandy to defend freedom, and I believe that was our last really meaningful war, to be honest with you. Every war after Normandy was political and was a mess we got in, and we never won. I think the roots of hate come from that people across the world do not know each other. There's not enough education about cultures and civilizations. And history books taught in elementary schools and middle schools are written by sometimes closed-minded people who are politically driven. Suffice it to say that some social studies books actually feed into the stereotypes that politicians want to portray. So education, communication between nations and people, and understanding that if a political event happens anywhere, somebody's gonna invest in it in the wrong way. So when I was on the other side of the fence, I've seen how some people would encourage American presence to fight against, for example, then the Cold War and communism in the Middle East. And I've seen others who were leery of American presence because of the American unwavering support of one side in the Arab-Israeli conflict over the other, while I think Bill Clinton brokering peace made a milestone by, for example, having Camp David and starting the talk. And then when you come to the United States, what you see is that most people have not been out of even their states. And I've met people who lived in a small town in North Carolina who've never been to Raleigh in years. So education is the key. Whereas if you don't know somebody, it's easy to hate them. One thing that Katie Couric said in her presenting us in New York and the premiere screening at the Museum of Arts in Manhattan, she just said very meaningful words when she said, "You cannot hate up close." If you get to know somebody, you cannot hate them. So get to know people, get to know cultures, get to read about them, get to meet them. And don't subscribe to politicians and TV and brainwash, because it's meant to direct you as an American voter, as an American citizen in certain directions. And to preserve your freedom and your values and your constitution, you do owe it to yourself as an American to read more about other nations and cultures. For example, Islam prohibits murder. No excuses, hands down. Islam prohibits, even if there was an enemy of the United States, outside the United States, he is not allowed by Islam to come and deceive and penetrate and kill civilians. That's treason. If there was a war, a Muslim had to fight in his country to defend his country, he's only allowed by faith to fight on the front line. He cannot deceive people. He cannot betray people. So terrorism by definition is totally un-Islamic. It's totally a faction that is astray from Islam. And in many narrations, our Prophet actually referred to such phenomena or phenomenons as these people who commit murder in the name of faith and who stray away from the faith and who invent their own faith and who innovate and justify violence. He, in some narrations, called them the dogs of hellfire, because they're really degenerates and they're not representing any civilization. Another reminder is to understand history, go to the Middle East before the recent wars that USA has been involved in. For example, before we invaded Iraq, Christians lived in Iraq for 14 centuries with Muslims in a very prosperous way. And Saddam, for example, though I do not support a lot of things he did, had maintained a secular country that will never discriminate against anybody based on faith. And his foreign minister or Secretary of State was Tariq Aziz, who was a Christian. So look at that. Christians lived in Iraq prosperously until we invaded Iraq and we handed it on a silver platter to Iran, and now it's all sectarian and a mayhem over there. Religion, whether it's Judaism or Christianity or Islam, is beautiful. Religion is all the same, and it's all one of the Abrahamic faiths I'm talking about, with all respect to people who don't believe in them. I respect their views too, but none of them will support any of what's going on. I hope I'm answering your question. Whether I see hope or not, just by being able to go back to work after what happened to me and my family, and by being able to sit down here and talk to you and do documentaries and participate in my community in Raleigh, and I'm on the board of the Islamic Association of Raleigh. By doing that, I'm sure you can tell I see hope. If I did not, I've seen people who lost a child to a car accident and they stayed in bed for 5 years. And after what happened to us, me and my wife and our son Yusuf and the Barakat family, we all see hope and we all survive and we all go to work and we all try to make it. And it's never an easy day. I hope that answers the question. And thank you for coming. We love the literacy school at UNC.
So we have time for one more question. Maybe two. We'll see how quick the question is, because I saw you raise your hand.
Hi, my name is Valerie Arevalo, and I just want to brag a little bit because I have known Zainab my entire life. I met Zainab when I was about 9 or 10 years old, and I guess question and comment. here to say to everybody that's here, I'm very thankful to God and to life to be able to have met Zainab's family, because I think we would have not have the same views and the same opinions that we do about our Muslim, like the Muslim community, had it not been for them who educated us, who taught us about the religion, and who taught us about forgiveness, about what their religion meant to them. And we always admired how resilient and how just solid they were. And I guess my question is to all of you, how do you approach, or what would you recommend to other marginalized communities to be resilient and to have the same unity that you have?
So I recently learned about this concept of relational power. So people who are in different communities, and they might even have different circumstances that they're dealing with, different difficulties, if they communicate with one another and they brainstorm together and they create, large, powerful groups in numbers, they can make humongous change. Like, it's insane the amount of change that you can do just by, getting together with another community. I know that's something we've discussed a lot today, but there's an organization called Durham Can. I'm sure Zainab can speak about this a lot more than I can, but they've used this concept of relational power, where two communities who have different goals will come together and will fight for each other's goals, and they're able to succeed in so many ways that you can probably vouch for. And it's really inspiring and powerful, and there's actually a group that's starting up in Wake County, so if anyone is interested in being a part of that, please let me know. We're just getting started, and it really, we're able to see in different communities how they were able to change legislation and affect policy, and really vouch for the people in minority communities who haven't been spoken for.
Sure.
Can I?
Yeah, she's our neighbor.
I just want to add a couple of points to that, and I cannot help but to talk from a psychiatrist's point of view to the question, and because I see minorities and I read about minorities and how they live and how they think. And my advice would be, everybody needs to examine their inner thoughts and feelings. Everybody needs to examine, as our friend here said, their identity. And I encourage people to be proud of who they are and hold on to their identity. And at the same time, need to be loyal to the soil they live on, and be involved and participate and be non-apologetic Americans. The way to enrich this country and to participate in democracy and to reinforce minorities is to, first of all, be ourselves and be proud and be acculturated more to the current culture, and also to participate genuinely in the American day as citizens. I sometimes feel uncomfortable when I see immigrants live here, but they still give in to their yearning, to the old culture they came from, and the nostalgia to where they came from, and they stay a bit confused about their identity and defining themselves. And I, for myself, define myself as a Muslim American. When I visit Jordan, where I came from, I really feel a bit out of place. And I can't wait to come back home, because it's been a long time. So your identity takes time to form. Give it time. It's not going to happen overnight. And again, I encourage all minorities to join hands and work together, because when we gather all minorities, we're a big body, and we can be a big voting bloc too. That's attractive to politicians to talk to and respect more than the last election has done.
Okay, last question. This gentleman right here, Colin. As he's making his way over there, I know I'll have some closing thoughts and some some suggestions, and I know our panelists will stay here for a little bit if you want to come up and introduce yourself. Go ahead, sir.
Hey y'all, thank you so much for coming today. This is like super stimulating, and I feel like I have a greater awareness for this subject. And I just wanted to ask y'all for any suggestions, and I know we talked about education and conversations, which are very important. And then so like initiating these conversations, in what ways can we do this appropriately while recognizing one's socialization and upbringing?
Shadi has an answer.
Yeah, Zainab.
First, Zainab.
See, it's tough because I have a way of approaching things. I just ask. I think a lot of times people hesitate or they're a little bit more, it obviously depends on the person, but usually if you ask, for example, a Muslim a question or you start a conversation, most people are more than welcome to talk about, you know, why we believe what we do, or why we do what we do, or why we believe what we do. And it's usually, most people don't ask us questions. I think that is one of the barriers to a lot of this, is a lot of people will assume without asking questions. And so the first step is usually ask questions. Obviously take into consideration people's different personalities and how they are, but if a person's open to receiving questions, ask them those questions. And I know that I'm a type of person who can usually go to someone and just keep, you know, I'm a very curious person, so I'll just keep asking them why, and people usually tend to open up. My background's also psychology, so I think I just kind of have a better understanding sometimes of people, but I think if you're genuinely listening and you're there to really, because you actually care to learn about that person, the other person will feel that naturally, and naturally you'll have a conversation that'll help you grow. But if you're there to, I already know everything, this is my mindset, I already have the stereotypes of you, I'm here to break those stereotypes and you answer all of the questions I have, versus letting the person who's telling the story control the narrative, is probably not the right approach. So letting the person who's telling the story tell their story as they want to, and then also realizing the privilege you have as a white male to realize that, you know, you have a privilege in this world to where you can elevate others' voices. So maybe not speaking for them, but giving them a place, using your privilege to elevate the stories that they need to be told, whether it's the Muslim community, the Black community, Hispanic community, whatever community. So thanks for that question, and thank you for being here. Your first comment made me pretty happy.
I also want to add, you're in a great place. NC State has so many events that are, you know, made to allow those crucial conversations to happen in a place where you'll be able to ask the questions you want to ask in a safe place, in a way that, you know, it's an educational setting, so nobody's going to be attacking, hopefully. So I think take advantage of those opportunities when you come by them. I was at CSLEPS when I was at NC State, and Sam's in the back nodding. And it was honestly one of the best experiences I had, because I was able to start those conversations with people, and I was able to create events where we talked about those taboo topics. I mean, nothing's really taboo. I feel like we need to have those awkward conversations, because that's the way we're going to break those barriers. So I would say take advantage of the resources you have here. Justine's a great person to get in touch with also, and you can come talk to us afterwards as well. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
So a few housekeeping things before we go. So you all have asked some great questions, and there may still be more questions. You're not going to learn everything there is to know in 1 2-hour time frame. For our students in the audience, you're getting ready to embark on final exams. So I'm going to add a little more challenge to you. When you want to take that study break, go to YouTube or go to National Geographic. So this segment is now available for free on YouTube. So sit down with your friends, sit down with your floor mates, sit down with your club or organization and say, let's watch this documentary and have a conversation. We'll post on the Facebook feed, you know, that's probably not the right tech word, but our Facebook folks in the front, we'll post some links to resources. We also had a web page post. We'll put resources there. You've heard us talk about r3winners.org. You've heard us talk about the Lighthouse Project and the work that they do. Feed Their Legacy, which is a food drive that Shadi, he and his wife virtually run that, the two of them, many folks in the community, and that will occur in February. Run for Roseanne, which is specific to NC State. Colin has helped with Doha. Zainab will be doing that in the fall this year. So watch for more information. So a great way is to get involved and volunteer for activities. We've talked about going to the mosque. NC State has a scholarship called R3 Winners, and we award scholarships to 3 students in each of the colleges that Dia, Yusor, and Razan were a part of, College of Design, College of Sciences, and the Poole College of Management. So you have many opportunities, whether it's giving financially, giving of your time, or giving your brain more knowledge and learning from things. So please visit the Facebook Live stream. We'll put that post up with links. We'll also have that on the original website post. Share that, do your homework, get involved, and get outside your comfort zone. Most of us in this room are not Muslims, so again, it's incumbent on us to do that learning and to do our work and to stand for our Muslim brothers and sisters. In closing, thank you to our panelists. A round of applause for Dr. Abu-Salha, Shadi, Zainab, and Doha. Thank you to Ferris for being here as well. Those of you that haven't physically been to the Lighthouse, again in downtown Raleigh, and one of the quotes on the outside of the lighthouse, so you'll know the lighthouse when you see it, particularly at nighttime because it's lit up, and a quote from Dr. King: "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." It's inscribed around the porch at the lighthouse. Thank you again for being here. Good luck on exams. Have a great weekend. Go Pack.